Hey, big thank you to everyone who is tuning in tonight, tuning in later. We really do appreciate that you guys are taking time out of your day to come listen to what we have to say. Hopefully we got something for you. As Cody said, my name is Jonathan. I've started in the fire service in about 2009, started out as a volunteer here in Colorado. My journey has kind of taken me across the United States a little bit. I got my first paid job in a small department in Nebraska, went down and started working for Houston, Texas, and was there for about 6 years before moving back here to Colorado. And I'm now on Engine 3 here in Denver. So thanks for all that you guys do, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Jay Bonnifield. I work for Everett Fire here in Western Washington. Started at the same time John did, 2009, and kind of worked for like a suburban rural department, and then got hired at another kind of suburban rural mixed combination department, and then went to Everett, where I work now. I work downtown at Station 1, Engine 1, and just thanks everybody for tuning in tonight, and should be a good time. So I'm looking forward to it.
Inside the Mind, Jonathan and Jay got their beautiful faces here. Here are just some of the objectives, and we kind of talked about this already. This is going to just kind of be a discussion where Jonathan and Jay, they're just going to kind of share some of the thoughts, some of the stuff that's going through their brain. We wanted to focus on, kind of some bread and butter tactics in a variety of different occupancies. So you kind of get an idea for what they're thinking about showing up to a variety of different fires. But we didn't want to have like, fire showing from like a half a block of homes or anything like that, where we're really focused more on strategy. We wanted this to stay tactical. So with that being said, go to the next slide and let these guys just kind of take it from there. I'll be around to kind of jump in and ask some questions, and feel free, guys.
Well, you want to start with this one, Jay, and then I'll join in.
Yeah. Inside the mind of a nozzleman, I think is definitely something, I've been over the last 12 years really like diving into this and refining and trying to check myself and stuff, and one of the things that I think I've definitely noticed along the way, like working with guys and teaching at the Recruit Academy and all that kind of stuff, is separating like some of the better nozzle firefighters is just kind of starts with a mentality of decisiveness and a willingness to just kind of stick your foot in the ground and make a decision, get going, kind of a you got the solution in your hand. And I think as long as you kind of understand that really what our line is there for is to to create and maintain survivable space and protect the search and really buy back time for citizens and help get the search off well. I think that mindset coupled with somebody who's got a fairly decisive personality is something that's really important. So not kind of waiting on the heels to be necessarily told what to do, but somebody who's in tune with the needs of their crew and their company officers, kind of decision hierarchies, and can kind of push the envelope a little bit without as far as making decisions and kind of thinking ahead of what's probably coming down the line. Just somebody who's got their mind in tune to the game. So I think that's really what separates a lot of the good nozzle firefighters in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And I'll just kind of go into the first question that we've got on the side there, kind of what are the overall roles and responsibilities. So first and foremost, I think it starts with when you get to the fire station, that it is your responsibility to make sure that engine is ready to go. A lot of times I start with my hose loads, not necessarily just relying on the shift before you to make sure that things were done what the station has decided is correct. But just double checking all of that, and then obviously making sure that the functionality of that hose and nozzle system is just dialed in, ready to go. And if it's not, that you're pulling those lines off of the rig at the beginning of the day, getting them reloaded the way that they're supposed to. Just checking the things that are really going to matter if you were to get called out to a fire, even just a few minutes from when you show up. And I think, as the day goes on, that those responsibilities continue into, making sure that the company is training, making sure that guys are educating themselves the way that they need to be. Because when it comes to the fire ground, those roles shift to making sure, like Jay said, that they can be decisive in the line that they pull off of the rig, in the stretch that they make, that they're making quality decisions, because they are able to make or break what happens on that fire ground. And really, and this is kind of answering the last question a little bit as well there, but the reputation of the company is really dictated on how good they are on the fire ground when it's all said and done. And the nozzle firefighter is the one with the solution, like Jay said. And if he doesn't know what he's doing in terms of opening and closing that nozzle when it should be open and closed, and getting the hose line where it's supposed to go, then that reputation is quickly going to decline. And so they've got to be dialed, because, the department, the citizens are all relying on that nozzle firefighter to know exactly what needs to be done. I watched an old episode of Brass Tacks Hard Facts that talked about this particular topic a little bit. It was done by Ray McCormack, episode 69, if you guys want to check it out. But kind of what he said makes a good nozzle firefighter specifically is dedication. He just wrapped up everything in terms of mindset, in terms of job knowledge, in terms of abilities, with the word dedication. And I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I'll just add too to the roles and responsibilities. I think something that kind of has helped me so far, and something I try to pass on to some of the guys that I'm teaching the Recruit Academy and stuff is, I think it is a responsibility of myself and the other pipemen and stuff to seek out expectations from the company officer, and to kind of try to put some forethought into some of the decision making points that you're going to want some clarification on. And if nothing else, it's just to stir up conversation. Hey Cap, what do you we bump into a victim on the nozzle, like how do you want us to how do you want that whole operation to go down? What do you want, and what are your thoughts on that? And I think that's part of like you're saying, John, of being dedicated and kind of having your head in the game and thinking about that next step, about what if, not just kind of waiting for everything to come to you, and then maybe whining about when it doesn't, or my Cap won't come out of his office or whatever. Like, seek it out and take some ownership of that situation, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a good point to kind of put forward a disclaimer as we go through this. By no means are we saying usurp the authority of company officers, of your department's SOGs, anything like this. This is just kind of our own tactical perspective of each of these fire grounds, and just kind of what we're thinking as we step off of the rig. The most important thing is to have those conversations ahead of time. That way you're not stuck at the tailboard trying to have that same conversation when seconds count on the fire ground. So hopefully as we go through this, you'll kind of have some instances where you can say, hey, what conversation should I be having if we're not already having these conversations as a company? Because really, the fire ground only operates well if you are operating as a company. So this isn't an individual thing by any means. And we want everybody on board, have these conversations ahead of time. That way, things are sped up on the fire ground, because you're not having to delay trying to figure out, oh, what is my officer thinking right now for this? You've already pre-planned that, and you're just good to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Now, how about the heel? What are some of the mindset behind the firefighter that's going to be backing them up and bringing hose? And obviously they're super important to this equation too.
Yeah, the line's only as good as the heel, really, and the heel and the nozzleman, or backman, nozzleman, whatever you want to call them. I like to view the relationship as codependent. You can definitely, as a nozzleman, you can outpace your heel, which in turn then shoots yourself in the foot. You can basically end up tuckering yourself out because you're outpacing what your heel can do, and kind of vice versa. Like your heel can end up, being unpracticed, behind the eight ball and stuff like that, and end up, getting the nozzleman kind of jammed up and slowing down the whole operation. So really, I think that they're codependent on each other. And I think one of the things that makes a good heel is being a great nozzleman, because you understand the needs of the position. And when I turn a certain way, like how to feather the line to kind of facilitate that turn, and just kind of the advancement of the line. You understand the needs a little bit better. So it's important to be a good nozzleman, and then in turn pay it back as a good heel, I think. And then a search mindset, I think, is really important from the heel, because the nozzleman's really tied up with attacking the fire, and under those kind of situations where your heart rate's up and you're amped up and you're inside and you're kind of singular focus. We try to train as much as possible to make sure that we're still keep an eye out for that stuff. But especially the heel, it's a little bit easier mentally for that person if they're able to have like a good search mindset of constantly keeping their eyes scanning while they're feeding the line and all that kind of stuff to make sure that the advance goes smooth. But as you bump past a couch, sweeping up on the couch and so on and so forth, to just try to maximize our effectiveness in the attack corridor.
Absolutely. So in a lot of departments, especially 3-man engine companies, the officer becomes the heel, and that's a big ask of that officer, in my opinion, because the backup firefighter is going to make or break how quickly the nozzle gets to the seat of the fire, and how quickly things are going to change for the better on that fire ground. So as that company officer is, moving through the structure, he's got to be, the lookout for the nozzle, making sure that we're not passing up fire, things like that. So what's going to make a good heel in that situation is somebody with some amazing situational awareness, recognizing not only the layout of the building, how he's going to be able to most advantageously move hose in and through that building, but also have an awareness of the entire fire around him, as well as being able to, hop on the radio and give those pertinent communications as time goes on. In the situations where, we're able to throw additional individuals onto that line, which hopefully we are as the scene progresses. Say you have that 4-man engine company, the officer is able to be a little more hands-off, do what he needs to do, and then that backup firefighter coming off the back step is able to really pick up the pace, I feel like, because they're not so task saturated. Things that they can do to really help themselves out is really understand where the pinch points are going to be, and be able to really read the inside of a building from the outside of the building. So the nozzle firefighter, he's definitely going to have to be able to take a quick overview of what that structure is in order to determine, the length of line that needs to be at that front door. But what the backup then needs to be able to do is be able to understand, okay, so where is my living room going to transition to a hallway, going to transition to a bedroom, and then be able to know, where can I offload hose opposite of the advance in order to keep things going smoothly, keeping hose off of pinch points, recognizing that just because I'm feeding hose into the building doesn't necessarily mean that I'm allowing my nozzle firefighter to creep forward as well. So those are things that a backup has really got to dial in, is what is it going to take me in order to methodically advance that nozzle firefighter at the pace that he's trying to go. And then if for whatever reason, which on almost all fire grounds, this is going to happen, that heel has to slow down to, go get slack or whatever it might be, that he communicates that back and forth to the nozzle. So just yells up the line, hey, give me, 10 seconds, I'll yell back whenever we got more hose, whatever communication you have between the two of you is. But just that he's not leaving that nozzle firefighter tugging, not understanding what's happening down the line by that heel firefighter.
Yeah, I think it's also important too to have the mindset of essentially driving the leading edge of the line. It's kind of the friction point in between myself and the nozzleman. If I'm the heel, is continually making every effort I can to drive that leading edge off the line, off of the next pinch point, and being conscious of that, because if the worst place that nozzleman can kind of end up is jammed up shy of a corner. Like if I got to go back for line, I understand that, as a nozzleman, really I've got maximum effectiveness when I'm using the full reach of my stream. So like if you can get me around a corner and hold, and tell me to hold, I'll sit there, I'll flow some water, I'll pause for a second, kind of hunker down and let you go get some line. But yeah, just kind of a good awareness of the needs of the nozzleman. Like if you're thinking about trying to go back for more hose, if I can get you just a couple more feet, get you around the corner so you can really use the reach of that stream, and then okay, hold there. I know you're going to be, in a good position there. Now I'm going to go back for some hose, bring it forward, and kind of come up with a game plan right before I make that move. So I'm not just trying to, load as much hose as possible. Like, oftentimes with heel work, I think the mindset becomes like, get as much hose from the yard into that first living room as possible. And you end up kind of overloading the attack end of the line with the supply. You end up basically shooting yourself in the foot, to where now we're adding friction to the system. And so drilling, like John said, drilling the common layouts, like the most common layout for myself in our area is going to be in the front door, a right or left, which is a 90-degree turn, right or left, and then another 90 into a room. Like if we can get that operation really dialed in, to where I'm not just like yarding in big old bites of hose on top of the leading edge of the line or the attack side of the line, and making it to where I can get him to the room in a good, reasonable fashion there. That's what's all about right there. So drill those most likely scenarios, and you're going to be able to, definitely account for, the less likely, or the, kind of ones that throw you for a loop a little bit. You have already a good game plan built off the ones that you're used to.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is important for that heel firefighter is to understand that it's dynamic and how far away from that nozzle they're going to end up. So when that nozzle firefighter is static, when the line doesn't have to move, they can bump up that line, continue to have that, face-to-face conversation. They can help absorb that nozzle reaction. They can, even just putting a knee on the line is going to assist that nozzle firefighter in eating that nozzle reaction. But when it comes to now it's time to move this line, maybe they do have to bump back 10, 15 feet to that last pinch point and really work that line and just be comfortable not being right on the air pack of that nozzle firefighter. Because if you've got two guys stacked up on each other trying to advance that hose, one guy's going to be working really hard, the other guy's going to be working against his backup, and they're just not going to be able to coordinate their efforts the way that things need to happen. So as that backup firefighter, and somebody asked in the chat, is the heel the backup? And yeah, we're using those terms interchangeably. But understanding that those two often are working together best when they're not necessarily touching bottles.
Yeah. And that brings up a good, kind of a good thing too. Just not even hose movement related, but it is, a possibility that the nozzleman can, so keeping tabs on the nozzleman. And, if you like hear a stream, for instance, that sounds like it's just drilling a wall, like he's not making the fire room, or maybe he pushed past the fire room and he's in the in the bathroom or something like that. Like, it sounds goofy, but that kind of stuff happens where your nozzlemen, as soon as they open the line, they kind of lose visibility, and then they start making a push down the wherever, the hallway or something like that, and they overshoot the fire room. So just kind of staying heads up from behind, because a lot of time that nozzleman ends up losing a lot of visibility, and if they're not in tune to their stream sounds and so on and so forth, then they can end up in some funky places sometimes. So just kind of keeping tabs on that, and making quick communication, redirect them real quick, because you're kind of eyes over, like John's saying.
Nice. So, hey, if you guys don't mind me jumping in and asking a quick question, then, based on listening to what you guys have said here for like the past 10 minutes about what makes a good nozzleman, what makes a good heel, especially for you, Jonathan, if you've got two firefighters in the back,
mm-hmm.
do you give the nozzle to the junior guy or the senior guy? Because, in a lot of ways, it seems like, the heel's job is more dynamic. They may be, having to make those decisions away from the company officer about, exactly how far away to operate, and, some other stuff. So what are your thoughts? Do you give the nozzle to the junior guy or the senior guy?
Well, am I the junior guy or the senior guy that day?
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to know first before I answer this. So, I mean, there is two schools of thought. The nozzle firefighter is responsible for putting out the fire. And if we're not applying water effectively, we're not going to put out the fire. So in that sense, you could say, the senior firefighter is going to, have the best idea of how to get the stream all over the room, all over the hallway, painting every surface. But also you could say, the junior firefighter is probably going to have the oversight of the officer. The officer will hopefully have a tick behind him or something to direct that junior, and give him that insight that he needs, and allow the senior firefighter to, do the magic that he knows how to do back down the line. So, I've worked in two different systems. So, in the department that I worked for before, the guy sitting behind the officer, who was going to have the officer behind him inside of the fire, got the nozzle. And the system that I'm in now, the more senior member gets the nozzle. Really what I think it comes down to is, who the officer has the most confidence in terms of getting the job done. And if historically the job has failed because of hose movement behind the nozzle, maybe he addresses that by putting the senior there. If the issue is stream placement, maybe he holds that junior member back, and allows his more senior member to get the job done. And I think that's just a process that you have to go through on the training ground, with your guys, and the officer ultimately probably has to make that decision of, what is going to be the most effective use of my guys in this instance.
Awesome. Well, you guys ready to get into watching some fire videos?
Absolutely.
Do it.
All right. So we're going to start off with some single family fires. This one's going to be an outside in. We'll get the video rolling. Jay and John, again, let me know when and where you'd like me to stop this video. I'll make sure I get it muted so we can hear you guys kind of discuss. This one, I'm going to fast forward till we start seeing some fire.
I'll throw this disclaimer out there too. We have the ability to sit here and Monday morning quarterback. We're not here to knock any of the tactics of these videos. Hopefully we're grabbing, the quality, minute or two of video on these. And if we do say something different tactically, this isn't a knock on any of these departments or whatever. It's just kind of our own perspective on that.
Cool. I'm going to let this video play for a minute. Right. So single family home, pretty good working fire. We got a decent amount of fire, again, outside in. We've got this chain link fence that, can kind of make things
stop it here, Cody?
complicated on the stretch. Say that again.
Oh, I was just going to see if you could stop it right there, just so that guys could get a view of the fire engine, how far away they were, the line that they pulled, and the path of travel. So just take a quick glance at that, everybody, and we'll discuss it as the video plays. So go ahead and hit play. We're good.
Fires always go better when the chief is on the nozzle, right?
Absolutely.
You can self-assign some target solutions checkoffs for this part.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of seen what we want to see out of this video, and one of the questions becomes, okay, so do I try to take my nozzle inside the house first, or do I address this body of fire that's right here? And for me personally, I'm addressing the body of fire that's right in front of me. I have the ability to affect change immediately because I'm right on top of this fire. It's more or less the equivalent of a bedroom's worth of fire, in my opinion. We're looking at a deck that's like maybe 10 by 12 would be my guess. And we have the ability to stop that engine right now from running just by flowing a pretty minimal amount of water. To me, this is an 1 3/4 fire. So we pull your 1 3/4, we flow this line for, 15, 20 seconds. And then I don't know if you caught it, but we've got a front door right to the right of where these guys took their line. And so I get a good knockdown on that deck, and then I have the ability to head in that door right to the right of the chief there that Cody's showing us, if I feel like there's extension into the house. So it's more or less kind of a transitional type attack. But the thing is all of my fire for the most part is outside. So I've got to address that before I allow this thing to continue to build. And honestly, I don't expect there to be much fire inside of this house. We've got to address the eaves. We got to address the fact that there is the opportunity for this to extend into an attic. But in terms of getting into the bulk of this house, I just don't see it happening. We're not seeing smoke charged out of that door. We're not seeing smoke stained windows or anything like that. So to me, get water on this fire as quickly as we can from the outside, then move our line in that door that's right next to this point of attack that the chief chose right there.
Yeah, I agree 100%, John. 1 3/4, and you got to address the exterior body of fire. It's definitely the quickest way to shut off the engine, like you were saying, and make everything better faster. The one thing I'll say about their entry point there is, up on that deck is I'm going to be kind of a little bit mindful of, obviously that deck took a pretty good beating there for a little bit. So, definitely make sure you wash it down real good, on the way up, and exterior fires, they start, hit the wall, spread up, get up in the bird blocking, and up into the attic real quick. And, you can save yourself a lot of heartache in the long run by, getting a lot of water, kind of match the pitch of the roof with your stream there through the bird blocking, and try to get some water right before you make the move inside, get some good water up in the bird blocking up there, and try to let your water work in the attic space, and then, make the move inside. If that deck if I start getting up on the deck and knock the thing out and make it go dark, get some water in the attic, and I start kind of swimming in the deck because it was took a pretty good beating. Then there's a door right there on the delta side that is really quick. It'd be easy to hop over there and get inside and finish the thing off. But you're going to do 95% of the work just getting there to the deck. His hose stretch, he ended up right at the gate with essentially the nozzle and all of his, slack back in the street. So just kind of from a, not for the pipeman making the stretch and for the heel, you're kind of making a lot of work. Like I was saying, that codependent relationship, you're making a lot of work for your heel by leaving all your slack back so far. Because after you get up on that deck, you're going to make a 90-degree turn, head into the house there. And he's got quite a good run from where the slack is back in the street there to get that slack up on the deck. So dropping that thing and dropping, and pulling forward so that you end up with your nozzle and that first coupling pretty close to the gate there. And wouldn't be a bad idea, if that gate was a little bit closer, maybe touch it on your way by, so that if you feel like that fence is pretty hot, your hose isn't going to rub up against it and cause some problems. And wash the deck down real good before you make the move inside.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think you're gonna come at this parallel with alpha or parallel with delta? And is it a big deal either way?
So this video is a little hard to tell like orientation, but it looks like front porch is actually opposite of where we're looking at. So the deck right next to the chief, like on his shoulder, I'm saying that's Charlie. Is that kind of your guys's view of this as well?
Oh, I was calling the deck
Okay.
alpha just because it was street side.
Okay. It looks, I mean, and this is just because we've watched the video before, it looked like there was also front porch on the side opposite of this, but just for the sake of this, we'll call this side alpha, where the deck is right here.
Okay.
And then the bulk of the fire, we'll call that Bravo. Let's say that.
Okay.
So what I would do in this instance, and I told you to pause the video, and we got a second look at it just now, because what that chief did by walking that slack down the street, yes, because this was a short setback, he had to get rid of some slack. But by doing that, what he did is then he just wrapped these huge bushes, these huge trees into his stretch, that as he needs to go into the house, those are going to stop that hose from coming out of the street inside the house with him. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my hose down that sidewalk along the fence line there, and then I flake my hose backwards away from that front door. So all of my slack is there with me, and I've taken a path that doesn't include the obstacles that they brought into that stretch.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Sweet. And then if you do have a report of parties trapped, does that change whether you're stretching to that door that we've seen versus hitting it from the exterior?
For me, no. We've got the huge bulk of fire right there. We don't have signs and indications that we've got a charged atmosphere inside of that house. I think as soon as we address that exterior, that house is going to clear up almost immediately. Now, looking at this deck right here, we've got a ramp right there. So that could be a wheelchair accessibility for somebody in that household. But at the same time, if we try to put that nozzle down, go inside, wheel somebody out, we're doing nothing to the bulk of the fire that we could have knocked down in, essentially 10-15 seconds of flow like we saw in this video. So we're running the risk of losing the house and struggling to get somebody out, when we could just put the fire out and then get them out of an IDLH as well.
Yeah, and it's a return on investment thing. Like, what's the most bang for my buck that I have with my first line? And like these outside in fires, a lot of times the impact to the interior, like right now, the impact to the interior isn't like extreme. Like I still definitely, obviously I'm going in all that kind of stuff, but like if I go interior, my stream's effectiveness to be able to address the body of fire, the main body of fire on that exterior deck is pretty limited. So the bang for my buck is to knock that deck fire out, and then I'm right inside the door. I mean, it's I'm not delaying getting inside any is kind of the thing there. So I don't think there's any gain by getting the line in one of the other doors. In fact, if anything else, there's loss on your stream effectiveness to be able to hit what's actually burning there. So
yeah.
Nice. You guys ready to move on to the next slide, or do we have any other questions come up in the Q&A that I can't see?
Yeah, there's one in there, bro. Chase McDaniel asked, there was indication of good fire and smoke involvement inside the structure instead of on the exterior scene. Does that change your decision?
Yep. No, not really. Not for this one. I mean, that body of fire on the exterior needs to get dealt with, and it doesn't. There's no delay in getting to the interior of the building, right? Like this, as soon as I shut this thing off on the outside, I'm inside and I'm working the interior fire, and I'm in what looks like one of the main ingress egress pathways on the building there, and I'm making positive change as I go, and I'm dealing with the bulk of the fire first. So yeah, that doesn't change a whole lot for me there. Not on that fire.
Yeah.
Sweet. You guys ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, one thing real quick I will say is with fences. So something for just a hose stretch real quick is this one's pretty easy because I got a gate right there. But sometimes with these fences, something that can get neglected sometimes is you like try to stretch the line in a way that gets to one of the gates, and maybe that's a less desirable path of travel. So like we don't always have to go necessarily through the gate. Like if I shoulder hose, like if I got 150 or 100, or like for us we shoulder 150 feet of hose, or if you shoulder in 100 feet of hose or whatever it is, you can set the stretch to the chain link fence, set your bundle down on the fence, and then walk around to the gate and then pull that bundle up and over into the yard. So you got your slack inside the fence, but it takes a little bit more advantageous path of travel. So, you don't always have to confine yourself to stretching in line with the gates necessarily. This one was a good opportunity, but you don't have to do that.
Nice. You guys go to the next one then. All right. So we're sticking with single families. This time we got a 2-story attached garage, well involved. See that header from a ways out, that's always a good indication you got going to work. I'm going to speed this one up a little bit. Just it takes these guys just a little bit of time to start getting after it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is another good one. In terms of questioning, where's that first line going? I know sometimes you'll have people say, hey, my first line, I've got to protect the interior of that building. So my first line, I'm stretching through the front door and I'm headed to that man door from the garage into, the back of the house. Others are going to say, yeah, it's really hard to get a handle on this fire from that perspective. And so let's drop one here in the driveway. And then other people suggest, hey, you can do both at the same time. What are you guys' thoughts?
So for me, I can address the main body of fire from the driveway. And I am going to do the most work with my water, with my hose line, by attacking it from the driveway. So I would like to see a line dropped in the driveway, addressing that fire before I took the line inside. So these guys, they made the choice of taking 1 3/4 inches through the front door. It looks like I'm not going to knock them for that. That was their decision. But for me, I'd like to take a 2.5 inches. I'd like to throw that in the driveway and just start taking care of that main body of fire right there. And I think that you would see that you'd be able to address most of that from a pretty static position. And you see these guys in the video right now starting to get set up for that type of operation. And we'll see how quickly fire is knocked down once they get water going. I'm not sure what the delay was. It looked like they were really slow to get that 1 3/4 charged. And for whatever reason, if they were having trouble navigating that house or whatever it might be, you don't have any of those issues in this driveway right now. Yes, we've got a car, but it's not going to affect their stretch at all if they had made the decision to just flow water from there first.
Yeah. Yep. Same here, John. The 2.5 right where they're at, crush the thing. One thing that Scott Corrigan is brought up a while ago that I think is very important on garage fires. Just keep that stream low. Like we're used to inside working high to low with our stream, and then on garage fires like that, just rip your stream down low on that thing, let your water work get carried up and through. You kind of maximize your effectiveness of your stream. And the 2.5 is going to handle this thing in short order, which is the whole goal. Like right now, the interior of floor 1 is kind of taking a good beating, and so is that floor 2. So getting this thing dealt with real quick. And while it's being dealt with, I think this is a great bread and butter drill for the vast majority, for most engine companies in the United States to really have this exact scenario down pat as attached garage fires. And being able to show up, and while one guy, you don't need any more. One guy can crush that garage fire with a 2.5, while another guy is stretching 1 3/4 to the front door dry, and then as soon as that 2.5 is done, shut it down. Get that 1 3/4 line charge in through the front door. We go, and we're in the main. We're in there. We're protecting that interior exposure, and able to get to work really quick on this thing. You don't have to delay getting inside.
Mm-hmm. I see a garage fire as a 2-line fire. So, one addressing the garage, and then one getting inside to make sure that we're stopping that fire from getting through the rest of that building. I was wondering, Cody, if you could back it up. Well, I mean, it's even occurring right here. So one thing I want to point out with 2.5 operations is you can do so much with one person like Jay is talking about. And you see these guys just absolutely getting crushed. We see them continually going back to half bail, just based simply on technique. All I have to do on a 2.5 is put my knee on the thing and drive the force of that water into the ground. The second that I try to pick that up, 3 guys can get worked on a 2.5. So especially for that backup firefighter, for whatever reason, guys really like to pick that line up off of the ground and feel like they're helping somebody, when in reality, just put a knee on the thing behind that firefighter. Don't affect that nozzle's ability to move that line around, because as soon as the backup firefighter lifts that line up, it's going to point that nozzle into the ground, and the nozzle firefighter is going to lose his ability to move that line everywhere that he needs to go with it. And you can see 3 guys get crushed on this line because all of them are trying to pick the thing up off of the ground. When the line is flowing, keep it low. When you're moving it, that's when we can lift it up.
Yeah, I saw two questions pop up, and they were kind of along the similar lines there. Of Kyle Thon asked if it changes things if like a truck company shows up first and they're trying to get inside and get a search off, and then who else? Somebody else asked. I want to get your question right here, so hold on, let me pull it up. Does it change? Does the plan change if the garage door hasn't failed yet? For sure, if the garage door hasn't failed yet, then I'm not gonna waste time trying to cut the garage door to get in through that way. Like 1 3/4 through the door, turn right, get to the interior garage door, put the thing out. Like I'm not gonna. It's gonna take longer to deal with saws. So first off, my engines didn't carry a saw. So, but and then if the truck company gets there first and they're inside searching, I don't think it really changes much in that regard here either, because the absolute 90% of that fire is in the garage. There's some heat in the living space, but as soon as you take out the garage fire, it's gonna suck up a lot of that's impinging on that living space there, so it's gonna make their life a lot easier.
Nice, fellas.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else on this one? Are we ready to go to the next one?
I think one thing that you could discuss is, do you lay in on this? Do you not lay in on this? And that's always a topic of discussion. in terms of your department, I mean, you got to have that established ahead of time. If your department operates that we shall lay in every time, for you to change it up in this instance would, you know, it would snowball for the rest of that fire when everybody expects you to have your own water. I think this is a fire that you could probably make a decent attack on with tank water. People are afraid to pull 2.5 when you're just operating off the tank. But if you think about it, you have 2 minutes of continuous flow when you're flowing about 250 gallons a minute out of your line. So you can address the main body of this fire, you know, off the tank water, no problem. You saw that engine laid in with 5-inch. You got to be really judicious to get that 5-inch out of the way if you are deciding to lay in on a fire like this, especially in a cul-de-sac. You could take off the egress for every single other apparatus on this fire ground if you lay 5-inch in the wrong place into a cul-de-sac. So it looked like that driver went opposite of that fire, but if he went straight to the front door with his line, he could really bog things down for any truck companies or engine companies coming behind them. So just something to consider as well with your operations on supply.
Yeah.
Hell yeah,
exactly.
As a truckie, I love to hear you engine guys talking about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can really end up, like you were saying, John, you can make that pretty difficult on the truck to where those guys are, you know, having to park out in the, you know, if this is a cul-de-sac here, I think it is, but yeah, where they're end up having to park a little bit of ways and, you know, dragging all their stuff from their toolbox up to the front of the building, you know, which ultimately, like, the fire attack should always complement the search. The fire attack should always, you know, benefit the search and all that kind of stuff, like protect and all that. So if even by how we lay out to a fire is going to end up causing a delay in that building getting a primary search done, you know, that's not good on our part.
Nice. All right, moving on. Basement fires. Let me get this video up and rolling. Let this one play out a little bit too. But again, I think, you know, one of the main questions I've always had is, where do you like to stretch on a basement fire? You know, most of our fires, we like to go through side alpha. But a lot of times if we're trying to get to the basement, we got to find those stairs, and a lot of times they're off the back. And then, yeah, you know, you have the potential to do a quick transitional hit, especially if you're going to be stretching to the back. But I'm kind of curious on what your guys' thoughts are regarding that. And then how that's going to affect the heel's decision on how much hose to bring.
So with this fire, it's answered pretty quickly in the fact that we basically have 1, maybe 2 routes to this fire, and both of them are going to be through the house and through the first, what we'll call the first story of the house, and advancing down the stairwell. We really don't have another point on this house that we can access this with any type of efficiency. We did have those small windows right there where you could potentially address fire. But in this case, I mean, your front door is probably your best bet in getting to that stairwell. It's going to make the most sense in terms of layout. Going around the backside, you never know what you're going to have on that backside. This is where having an officer do a really good 360 will tell us where our best entry point is. If there's a sliding glass door on the backside, that's the door I want to go through. If I don't have to advance down a stairwell through a chimney, I'm going to take that all day, every day. But in this case, we don't have that access point. The thing about, you know, those small windows from the side is all I'm doing by popping that is I'm letting even more air feed that vent limited fire that we're going to encounter when we get down there. I might be able to flow a little bit of water, but there's nothing guaranteeing that I'm going to be on plane with the bulk of that fire. If I stand up with that line, all I'm going to be doing is shooting it into the floor. So I would have to be like laying down on the ground, spraying through that tiny window on the side to even attempt to get water on plane with that. And depending on whether this is finished or unfinished, I may only be getting it in between, you know, a couple of joists and not really addressing what I think I am by flowing water through that. So I'm going to delay popping any type of windows that are small like that on the side, and opt to go through the house.
Yeah, and this is a really good, like a really good video representation of, you know, kind of a classic basement fire and stuff from a you know, size up perspective. Like you got ground level smoke and coming off the back, and you know, trace the smoke to its lowest level. Like one of the things that I try to get in the habit of doing as a pipeman is, you know, I don't get that 360, so I try to take the building, get two sides on the way in there. If I can just get two sides, and basically what I do is I just take the building. Like this building is deeper than it is wide, so I just kind of I'll halve and quarter the building essentially, and just kind of get me my ballpark, and then I just say, hey, is it below me, on my level, or above me? And like obviously, yeah, this one's below. So like if I'm concerned about it, like real quick, 1, 2, 3 decision making points for me. Like take this one, okay, the you know, smoke's all coming off the backside there. You know, the big volume of smoke is coming off the backside. It looks to me like it's pretty confined to, you know, the backside of that basement, which, you know, may indicate a finished basement, in which case, you know, we definitely are you know, benefiting from a finished basement down there. But, you know, like John's saying, if I can get on plane with it, like absolutely, I'm going to take that every day. But this one, you've got to get to those interior stairs. That window is so tiny, you know, your water mapping is going to be just, you know, horrendous so you're not going to have as much bang for your buck. Going across from the A side here is probably going to be the cleanest, you know, the cleanest stretch there. You know, if you're the heel, I think that's a good opportunity to use a bite, because I don't usually like to use bite work, but that building is pretty deep. So bringing a bite inside the, you know, about 3/4 of the way to the stairs, which are probably kind of near the rear there, and then dropping it and feeding that leading edge of the line as a nozzleman makes the jump down the stairs. And then, you know, from the nozzleman's perspective, as I'm, you know, anytime I can get to the bottom without, if I don't have to flow, cool. If I got to hit it, you know, shut it down, bomb to the bottom of the stairs, awesome. And, you know, if I got to flow while moving downstairs, I got to be ready for that as well. But anytime I get to on my way down, like just make sure you're sounding the stairs on the way down. Make sure you move the line in a way that you can get a good sound, and that you know, your weight is back. Be prepared to have your weight back and really, you know, lay back on those stairs, so you're not kind of sitting up in the nasty stuff. And when you get to the bottom, you know, be able to go 90 left, 90 right with your, you know, with your stream really well, because we're dealing with a pressure problem essentially on the way down the stairs. Like our water is not getting to the fuel necessarily that's down in the basement because of the angle of our stream. It's basically hitting that floor down there. So if I can move my stream on the way down, if I'm, you know, flowing while moving down those stairs, that, you know, that's awesome, because as soon as my line opens up, that upper floor, that floor 1, is being protected with my hose line advancement. But when I get to the bottom there, just pause at the bottom of the stairs and really wash that basement down good. And one thing I like to do is just bring my stream straight up to vertical and basically move it straight and then perpendicular to myself a couple of times. And if there's exposed joists, you hear them with your stream. It sounds like shuffling a deck of cards. And you know, that kind of, you know, let's pause a little bit. Let's make sure we really wash this thing down. If there's exposed joists, you're going to be, once I make the bottom, I knock the fire out. Like I just got to be conscious of those joists really need to get washed down, and they were taking a beating, and you know, really, you know, be careful and do good overhaul on that thing.
Nice. How important is it to have that communication with your heel, your backup, before you try to attempt to go down that stairs, so you know you've got enough line to get you all the way down?
I think, sorry, you don't want to get stuck on the stairs. That's the answer. You never want to get stuck on the stairs. So that communication is pretty vital. And I'm totally with Jay on bringing a bite in this case. You might even be able to advance that bite back to the stairwell. So you're almost guaranteeing yourself enough hose to make the bottom of the stairs when you're able to advance a bite that far into the structure. You know, you don't want to drop it right on top of the door to the stairwell by any means. You know, maybe drop it 3/4 of the way into the structure, drop it in, you know, the kitchen if the stairway's off of a mud room or something like that. Take the building for what it is, but find an open space near where your advance down the stairwell is going to be and drop it there. Don't take it all the way to the stairwell door, but by taking a bite with you, you're going to give yourself, you know, the 15-20 feet of hose to, at a minimum, make the bottom landing to where that nozzle firefighter can open up and flow like Jay was talking about from the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah, and I mean, if you gotta, like, again, having that kind of search mindset, you know, let's say for kicks and giggles that you weren't necessarily able to make the basement for whatever reason, like, you know, the longer that if we're able to hold that basement with our line and, you know, being able to flow water from the top there, you know, use that door, whatever, to be able to get you know, buy time to get the search off of that building. You know, that's another contingency plan to just kind of talk through with your crew of, hey, what happens if I'm shooting the stairs and I can't make it, you know, which is entirely possible. So, you know, just a good thing to talk about, and then just kind of prioritize, like, hey, let's protect that search and do the best we can here with this basement, and you know, find another way.
Nice. One of the other things I noticed this time watching this video, obviously I caught it, haven't seen this video a couple times before. One of the problems that the nozzleman ran into on this one was, it looked like, you know, in the beginning of this video, he was stretching towards the back. They kind of changed their mind, but he'd already dropped some hose. How do you recover from that? Or is really the answer to be more patient, let that company officer get a peek off the backside, and let them make that decision before you've kind of committed to walking down, you know, this side of the building?
So you're saying, like, oh, so you've committed. So
let me back this up a little bit more. So right here, right?
Yeah.
He makes a little bit of spaghetti right there because he thought he was stretching to the backside. What happens if that happens? Or again, is the answer to just be patient if you're that nozzle, wait for your company officer to make this decision so that doesn't happen?
The ideal is that, like, on this one for sure, you see a lot of ground level smoke. If you see a lot of ground level smoke as a pipeman, it's not a bad idea just to hold for a second with the line on your shoulder, just to, you know, give your officer a second to kind of see things out and see if it is a basement fire, if there is another point of access and stuff like that. So that you're not putting hose on the ground just quite yet. Like, you know, we definitely want to get the line on the ground and get water to the tip quick and all that kind of stuff. But on this kind of situation, you can help them out just a little bit by holding there. Oh, yep, it's a basement fire. Hey, you still want me going in the A side? Cool. Okay, let's go. Let it rip. But you know, not fully committing just yet, because I see there's it looks like a basement fire even from the, you know, from hopping off the rig.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. Is there any questions that popped up that we need to address?
I don't think on this one.
Cool. You guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Now we're moving on to some multifamily. This one in this kind of terrace style motel. And so, yeah, get this kind of caught up to where we want to be here. Pause, give you guys a quick look. You know, looks like there's a couple units involved here. Then I'll let the video play for a little bit if you guys kind of want to just start talking about that mindset whenever you arrive to something looking like this.
So this was a type of structure that I had a lot down in Texas. With the weather being what it was, you had a lot of open breezeways. So this was pretty common for me. And for me personally, I'm actually going to stretch the stairs there. And kind of like Jay was talking about in that first video, rather than taking the time to wrap my hose all the way around each part of that stairwell, I'll just take my hose and throw it onto a stairwell like this right here. And then I'll take the stairs and just take it up that last run heading up to the second floor. I'm not going to, take a bundle up with me and try to drop it down on something that's only 2 stories like this. So I don't know if you guys can see it well, but right over the spot where it says more videos, where it's paused there, you see a stairwell there that's not that tall. So I'm going to take my slack, I'll stage it there, run up the stairs, pick it back up, and then I'm going to flake my hose out up on that second level. With this type of a layout, I've got plenty of room, to get rid of 100 feet of hose in this situation. So as the first in engine, I'm going to lay out my hose on that top breezeway, and then I'm going to address the main body of fire here. I'm going to try to get water into that fire apartment. And it looks like we're starting to expose into exposure number 2 to the right in this photo here. But me as the first in, I'm going to put my water right on that main body of fire.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously with multifamily, hotel, motel, all that kind of stuff, just the mindset is they're occupied. There's tons of people in these things, and the getting the line up to up to floor 2 like that is, like John said, that's a perfect option. Throw the bundle up and turn around or come around, pick it up and make your stretch up top. One thing, this one isn't necessarily a representation of this, because this one's pretty pretty leaned out and well vented and stuff. But sometimes with those overhangs, like apartments and some of the like garden style or terrace style apartments and stuff, you end up with those overhangs. They can accumulate a pretty decent amount of smoke. So just kind of maybe think about where you're going to set your line, where you're going to stretch to, because sometimes like you're coming down this long walkway and you drop drop some of your line, you start stretching in, and you can, in trying to make sure your line is stretched out how it should be, you can end up kind of getting yourself into the snotty stuff there before your line's charged. And it's just something to be aware of, because that stuff will a lot of times lean out, light off in that overhang there as it accumulates a lot of the heat. So maybe plan to give yourself just a little bit of space there, a little bit of a buffer if you see that thing's chugging pretty good. And then right before I'm going to basically open my line on that walkway and start ripping water into that main fire compartment. And it looks like the top of that door is starting to kind of burn on that second unit, like John was saying, on that right side. So right before I commit to that first unit, try to get some water into that second unit there, and not spend a ton of time, not sit out there forever, but at least get a little bit of water into that unit, and then make my push into that main unit there, and make sure that thing gets knocked out. But right away somebody should be stretching a second line for that exposure unit there.
So since you're stretching that second line for the exposure, you coming up a different stairwell, or are you dropping a coupling, or?
It would depend on how far away the next stairwell is. In my opinion, I think you still have the ability to, stretch in that same breezeway, depending on, how much hose they've decided to stage in your way. Obviously, you don't want to bring your backup line right over the top of your attack line. Typically, you're going to have, egress on each side of these units for this type of apartment. So it might be a good idea to bring it up a different stairwell. And as the second in, maybe you do something like a coupling drop, or just use a hook to hoist it up to the second. It's not as time sensitive as engine number 1 on this fire, but we're obviously extending into different units. So, we still have to have some pace to this. And that second in engine, he needs to decide, can I make a stop in that exposure on the right, or do I need to even go down one more apartment and open up the next one down if I'm afraid that we're really extending into the attic on this one? Either way, engine number 2 should have with him a hook and an attic ladder to address that attic right away. Because the last thing we want to do is let it run this pitched roof and knock out, 12 units on that top floor in, just a matter of minutes, because we didn't address that attic right away. So yeah, decide, can I make a stop in the exposure right next to the fire apartment, or go one more down, even get into the attic and make my stand there?
Yeah, and something that you can do is the first in nozzle, to kind of address that a little bit, or at least try to, is, once you knock down the bulk of that fire in that first unit there, if you can get into the bathroom and try to get up on the toilet, or the kitchen sink or whatever, and get yourself, I'm 5'8", so I'm definitely not a towering specimen here, so I gotta probably use the kitchen sink, but get up a little bit and then get your line. One thing that I've been doing more recently is, if you got a smooth bore on, if it's drywall, you can take the smooth bore, and that makes a pretty good hasty hook there for a minute. You can use a line to actually pop a pretty decent amount of sealing if that drywall is kind of brittle. So, start smacking the drywall a little bit with your nozzle and get that thing opened up if it's not already, and then start getting water. If you're able to get up a little bit, get some water going horizontally in that attic, because trying to come just straight up with that stream, you're not going to get a ton, but if you can get a little bit of water horizontal there, then you can definitely, help us, because this thing's ahead of us right now. It's in that common attic space, and you can help the truck guys on top and everybody else by getting some water going horizontal.
For sure. A question popped up, like, how much hose do we want on that second floor? For me, I can easily fit 100 feet of hose up there. That allows me to address the fire apartment, and it allows me to address the exposures on either side. It may not get me all the way down to address all of the units. I'm not necessarily worried about all of the units as the first line. And the more hose I put up there, the more bogged down I'm going to get. But I'm probably going to go with 100 feet of hose, and then let my slack kind of go down that stairwell.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And if you're a, second, third in engine company, something like that, and you're coming up, those railings. So the first in engine company, again, railings, metal railings, especially, make sure that your line's not going to bump into them, all when they're super hot. So give them a little bit of wash before you head in there. But if you're another company coming up, there's just enough space there for that 1 3/4 to kind of squeak through the bottom of that railing sometimes. So if you're coming up top there, head on a swivel, and if you see a little bit of hose trying to sneak its way through as the nozzleman's kind of open and closing the bail, and that line's moving around a little bit, make sure that your head's up for that. That's something we can, pipemen can kind of have each other's back on a little bit.
Mm-hmm. If this were to be 3 or 4 stories, that's when I would start considering something like a coupling drop or a rope stretch. But
Yep.
For second story, I'm not necessarily as worried about that, but that's where those type of tactics would come into play for me, would be floor 3 or 4.
Okay, cool.
Apartment.
Yeah, we did some testing just kind of like anecdotal. So take it for what it's worth. Like, go out and do your own testing for sure, because guys are gonna coupling drop and rope stretch a little bit differently, area to area. But for us, those are both what some of our go-tos, coupling drops and rope stretches. And what we kind of found was that floors 3 and 4, the coupling drop does a great job. Once we get beyond 4, the coupling drop ends up more frequently having a short stretch associated with it. So kind of the safe thing is just to err on the side of the rope stretch at that point, and you're pulling up kind of as much as you need. So sometimes the coupling drops. We end up going up, with our hose bundle dropping over the side. And, depending on your setback and all that kind of stuff, you can end up kind of limiting yourself just a little bit because you've got a finite amount of hose to work with. You can always pull some up if you're being heads up, but just from what we kind of saw, once you get beyond 4, the rope stretch kind of seems to work best.
Yeah. Kind of how we handle it. We do more coupling drops than rope stretches off of my engine. And a lot of times what we'll do is we will have one of the firefighters deploy 2.5 to the base where we think that the coupling will go. And then we're dropping down either a 100 or 200 foot bundle to that, depending on what type of distance we need to cover after we've, made our connection there. But typically we're kind of doing like a split stretch where one guy's deploying 2.5 out of the dead bed, and then the other guy's taking 1 3/4 up and dropping 1 3/4 down to the static loaded 2.5. So that's just kind of how our rig handles that. But we have 4 guys, and that might not work as well for a 3-man engine company. Instead of a firefighter in that situation, it might be the engineer tasked with taking hose out of the dead bed and taking it to wherever they think they're going to have to make that connection between the 2 hose lines.
Yeah. And the thing about it's not like if you bring up a rope bag, then you always have that as an option, no matter what. Like if you're, for whatever reason, we can't drop a coupling or whatever, you always have the rope stretch option available to you. So I think that's a good practice to get in when you're going vertical. Like we have 60-foot bags on our SCBAs for their kind of a life safety utility rope thing, and those are really handy. They're a smaller diameter line, but some of the problems that you can encounter with rope stretches, or you got to kind of be careful, trees and stuff like that can kind of hang up the rope bag on the way down. So, just make sure you choose a clear path of travel and whatnot. But yeah, there's just a couple good things to drill on there when you're thinking rope stretch or coupling drop.
Yeah, have some weight on the end of that rope too. So like a heavy carabiner or something like that, so that wind can't just throw that everywhere as it's coming down. Maybe it'll go a little bit more in the path of travel that you're hoping for.
Yeah, bust through the tree.
Yeah.
Nice. Does that take care of it for questions or comments on this one?
I think so. Yeah, unless anybody has anything they need to throw up in the chat.
Cool. Well, let's we'll keep it moving here. All right, here. This one is a simulation, but yeah, we've got our mid-rise center hall apartment building here, where we're going to be able to talk about a bunch of stuff, right? This building's got a standpipe. Obviously, center hallways. A lot of people have these in their first few areas where we've got really long halls. I'm going to go ahead and start getting this video playing. This particular fire happens, just off the stairwell, which can kind of make things a little bit easier. But we've definitely got a lot of stuff that we could talk about here. Who's grabbing the water supply, who's going to the FDC, who's going to operate the standpipe if you're going to use the standpipe on this thing. Kind of breaking up those responsibilities. What's the first due engine doing versus that second and third arriving?
This is the type of fire where having strict department SOGs helps out so much. And so if it's written down that first engine does this, second engine does this, first truck does this, like that smooths things out so much here. And kind of how I've operated in most of the departments that I've worked for now, first in engine goes to the FDC on a fire like this. So they are there to support the building systems. And whether or not you end up using the building systems, in this case, you're on floor 6. So you're pretty much going to, but if it was on a lower floor, you may or may not, but still best practice, go to the FDC. And then second in engine reverse out from that first engine to the water supply, that builds that redundancy into the water supply system. That also allows for pumping in series if this was to be a much taller building, to allow you to get the pressure buildup that you need between two engines as opposed to just one. So like, even if there was a hydrant right on the FDC, I still want a second engine hooking up to a water supply and hooking up lines between the two so that I can support that type of a water supply setup. I want two engines handling fire attack at a minimum. I want those two paired together, and I want them assisting each other in making that stretch. And it's kind of going to depend on whether you're a 2-man engine, a 3-man engine, a 4-man engine, how many people end up on that line. But this is a situation where I'm not going to attempt a fire attack in most cases. Now, if we're right off of the stairwell door, we might get lucky and be able to do this with two people, but I don't at all want to do that. That's like plan Z for me. I want that second in engine there paired up with the first in engine to assist in making that stretch, making the hookups, getting all the equipment that we need to that to the floor below in this case, to set up for fire attack. So that's how I'll start this fire.
Yeah, and we got a pretty good shot of the stairwell there, which is, I think that's kind of one of the big keys in this is, hey, do you take the standpipe? Do you stretch your own line? And that stairwell there, if there's a well hole present, then awesome. We can bring our own 2.5 up. We have the line size, 1 3/4, 2 inch, 2.5, and 2 1/4 there. I know 2 1/4 is getting pretty big in our area. My department, we can't buy it. We can't afford it. We're not going to it. We've got 2.5 and 1 3/4. So 2.5 on this fire off the standpipe, hooking up the floor below. And there's a really good chance on this, departments that have these kind of buildings in their area, there's a really good chance that, a truck company is going to make it on scene pretty quick on this thing. They're going to wipe the crumbs off their chest and pop up out of the recliner and hop up there real quick. And, they can give us a lot of really valuable recon, and like the station I work in, we've got a truck company in our house. And so a great conversation to have with them is like, hey, if you get in there ahead of me, just reconfirming, like, is there a well hole, and getting up to the top and get some recon, like, here's some things you can help me out with the stretch, because like they can get up there and recon and start searching and maybe try to get a knock with a pump can or something, but on something like this is well beyond a pump can fire. So obviously we're the ones that are going to be knocking this thing out. So if they know, kind of, if you talked about that ahead of time with your truck company, and they're able to kind of prime you with some information that they know you're going to need while you're coming up with the line stuff, that's a great thing that can help you out over the long term, but not 1 3/4 on this one.
Yeah.
What are you guys
completely.
using to measure that well hole? What's your rule of thumb to say, we could do a 2.5?
It's got to be like a gloved hand plus a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
that's not it right there.
Yeah, I think you would get away with 1 3/4 on this for a well hole if you were to do that stretch. I'm not saying that's the right line choice. I'm saying you could get away with 1 3/4. I think it would be tough to look at that and say definitively 2.5 will work in that well hole. For me personally, just looking at this building, it looks like an older building. So I'm letting the building kind of give me some clues on what kind of outlets I'm going to encounter, whether the thing is sprinklered, how old I think this system is. And for me, based on just how this building appears, I'm expecting pretty low flows from my outlets. And based on that, I'm going to take 2.5 up. Reason being is because NFPA prior to 1993 was saying that 65 PSI is the minimum on those outlets. after 1993 and even beyond that, the most that or the minimum jumped up to 100 psi at that outlet is the minimum. So we're talking about really low flows here. So even though we're talking about a residential space, we still are going to have outlet valve pressure issues. And 2.5 is the best way to address pressure issues in these types of buildings. That's not to say that you can't mix line sizes like FD&Y is talking about now, where maybe you do the bulk of the stretch with 2.5, and then just your lead section is something like a 2-inch or an 1.75 inches, whatever. You might be able to knock down a residential compartment space with that type of line. But for me personally, to eliminate the most variables, I want to come off that rig with 200 feet of 2.5 going up that stairwell. Because the last thing that I want to do when it comes to stretching in a building like this, yes, it sucks going 6 floors with all of that equipment, but what sucks even more is having to go back down 6 floors to get more equipment and then go back up 6 more floors with the stuff that I forgot to bring the first time. And if I bring 2.5 right off of the bat, that's going to be the best way to address a building like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, and something to consider with any of these is that, for one, wind can be a big factor. So the fire that you show up to, and you hop off the rig, you look up, you're like, oh cool, we got a worker, and let's go. By the time, that's not necessarily the same fire you're going to encounter when you start opening up the nozzle. Like that thing's obviously growing and everything, and especially in these like higher density multifamily center hallway, the likelihood of somebody leaving a door open, or getting a rascal scooter jammed up and having the door stay open, whatever it is, that's there. So it's going to take us a little while to get up and get in position no matter what we do. So that fire, when we first show up, isn't necessarily the same fire. So you get that 2.5, banking on that 2.5 kind of allows you that buffer room. And you've got a long span there in that center hallway. So if you have a dirty hallway with a lot of heat, you've got a long span. So you've got a lot of reach and punch with that 2.5. And getting that 2.5 to the apartment unit, and then just get it like 5 feet in the unit, and you're in gold. So obviously this fire is right off the stairwell, like we were saying, but given a fire mid-span or something, if there's any ability for me to stretch dry, I've got a clean hallway, I like to take advantage of that whenever I can. And again, that's something that the truck company can definitely help us out with if they get up there ahead of us, is, hey, clean or dirty hallway. If it's a dirty hallway, and play it safe, play it conservative, and try not to dry stretch too far, because ultimately, like, we're the ones that got to get there. And the truck company can be aggressive with getting a search off, because they know with relative certainty that we're coming in short order to knock this fire out. So we want to make sure that we get there. So, maybe be a little bit conservative on that dirty hallway, make sure that you get water to the tip, make sure that you get, not getting overrun, all that kind of stuff, and get that line in place, get it moving in. This is definitely a multiple company stretch. So, everybody coming in on the back end is just on their horse. If you're a pipeman coming up on the back end, there, on your horse, getting up there and start getting hands on the line.
Yeah, a stairwell stretch in a high-rise building is probably going to be like the most labor-intensive, fire attack that any company is going to encounter. So prior to charging that line, stretch dry as far as the fire will allow you. And I think that Jay did a good job of explaining that. And I think a lot of people are scared of 2.5 just because that's what they have in their mind is, oh man, I'm going to have so many people on each stairwell landing and just, battling for every foot of advancement. But, honestly, the majority of fires, we're going to be able to dry stretch pretty close to the door, unless we have, a failed door or some type of wind event. And, if we're dry stretching, it's not that difficult. We're doing this type of thing all the time, out in people's front yards and not complaining about it. But just because it's in a high-rise building doesn't mean that you can't accomplish some dry stretching as well with this.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea to bring a contingency. Like I'm always a big fan of anytime we go vertical, to bring a rope bag. So, bring a contingency plan for if there is some problem with that standpipe or whatever. Like we can have a contingency plan to maybe drop down a floor, pop a window, send a rope bag down, bring up some line, whatever it is. Like, maybe a good thing to talk through with your crew about what to do if there's a problem up there. So I like bringing the rope bag as my my backup plan for something. But
I'm just looking into the questions real quick, and there's 2 questions on well hole. One of them is, can you refresh me on what a well hole is? And the other is there any concerns with well hole stretches and railings melting lines? Yeah, Jay's talked about that a little bit. In terms of railings melting lines, like if you're encountering that kind of heat in the stairwell, hopefully we can close the stairwell door and address those railings real quick before we make any type of advance on the fire itself. One thing that several companies do, that I've seen work really well, is incorporate an elbow into the stretch as well. We carry them on our high-rise bag, and if we're not using that to get out of the cabinet, you could put that elbow where the hose would contact that railing and tie it off. And then that would isolate that part of your hose line to the railing. So you've got a metal appliance there that will hopefully address any heat concerns in that situation. As far as what a well hole is, that would be a gap between your runs of stairs. So if I have one run of stairs going down and one run of stairs going up, the well hole would be the distance between those 2 runs. There are certainly stairwells where there is no distance between that at all. So if the 2 runs of stairs and railings were touching each other, we would say there's not a well hole, but this distance between the 2 runs would be what allows us to use 2.5 or 1 3/4 or whatever it might be to stretch up that space. And that keeps us from having to take hose and, corkscrew the whole way up this building.
yeah, if you stood at the top and you hawked a loogie, your spit would go all the way to the bottom of the stairs there through the well hole, so to speak.
So more questions just popped up. So it says, does the 60 PSI 65 PSI from an outlet come into play with a dry system? On a dry system, it depends on if there's a fire pump. If this is just straight FDC piping into a standpipe riser all the way up, then the supply is dictated by whatever engine is feeding that supply. Now, if this is a dry system in the sense that it has to have some type of activation in the system and it's filled with air, then yeah, we're still dealing with the same pressure issues dictated by NFPA. So in terms of terminology, it depends on the system itself, and you have to look at that building and go inside to determine that, because we can't stand from the outside and say, oh yeah, this is a wet system, this is a dry system, this is just a building that happens to have a standpipe riser that has no water supply. You figure that out by getting in and seeing if there is something like a fire pump room.
Yeah, and I think my personal preference is, if it's possible via well hole or something like that, to bring our own line to the fire room, then that's kind of my preference. It just kind of weeds the variables out a little bit, but again, comes back to getting in your buildings and paying attention on EMS runs and all that kind of stuff. And if I don't have to use the standpipe, then I don't necessarily want to, but on this one, it's a good one for it. But on another note too is, so we had a small fire in a building very similar to this, just old old kind of high density, low income housing, and end up being, you know, a kind of a small kitchen fire, not a big deal. But one of the things that kind of causes some little bit of problems was, and we'd seen this days before, so we go to this building a lot for EMS runs, and there was people would come up with their shopping carts. They take, you know, steal shopping carts from the Safeway down the street, and they bring them in the stairwell, bring them up the not the stairwell, but they bring them up the elevator to their room, offload their groceries, and then take the shopping carts and shove them in the stairwell. And it wasn't just like one or two shopping carts. It was like, you know, this was basically all of Safeway's shopping carts now have found a new home in the stairwells of this building. And so when we were making the stretch off the standpipe, we're getting positioned there. We had to start like this lineup of guys shoveling shopping carts and all sorts of crap out of the stairwells there. And you know, definitely was something. You know, luckily not a big fire, and so on and so forth, and we dealt with it. But when you're out, you know, in these buildings, if you recognize that, that's something that you can do ahead of time to save yourself a lot of time and effort for when something does happen, is, you know, get on the building managers or whoever, you know, your fire prevention division or whatever you got to do to address those things ahead of time, so that, you know, when that fire does happen, you're not doing the Congo line of chucking shopping carts down to the next floor.
Mm-hmm. Another question popped up in the Q&A asking, it says, what is your opinion / your company's operations on stretching on general fire alarms, both residential and commercial? I guess I'll speak to this from my own company's perspective. So again, I run a 4-man engine company, and on any automatic fire alarm, we're getting dressed just as if the thing is on fire. So we're showing up, you know, we've got the SCBA on our back, we've got helmets on, we've got our hoods on, bunker coats, you know, we're fully dressed, ready to go. And we're bringing 200 feet of 2.5 along with us. So 50 goes on the officer's back, 50 goes on our junior firefighter's back. The senior firefighter is going to handle 100 feet, including the nozzle section. And then the junior is also going to be responsible for taking our high-rise kit. That is going to go inside with us on any type of automatic fire alarm in a building equipped with a standpipe. And then I forgot, we'll also bring a set of irons between the two firefighters as well, so that we have that available to us. In that instance, you know, we're going to the fire alarm panel, figuring out where is this alarm coming from. And then the fire officer will come along with us in most cases to figure out, you know, what is going on this floor that's causing that alarm. So, you know, we'll all hike the stairs together. If this happens to be, you know, a 20-30 story building, we may use the elevators, you know, with diligent elevator operations, never going directly to the floor in alarm, stopping several floors below. And then the two firefighters will then drop off and start making the connections on the standpipe. Now, we might start tying our bundles together, but not necessarily undoing the straps. But we are getting all of our equipment out of our bag. We're hooking up our gate valve. We're hooking up our elbows, making sure that we have the right connections to that standpipe, because we do have some systems that require an adapter. And then hopefully by time we've made those connections right there at the standpipe, the officer can say, you know what, this was, you know, faulty activation, or, hey guys, we've actually got something going on. So we're getting a rep either way. So we have the opportunity to make sure that we know this building systems. We've taken a look at the valve outlets. We're not necessarily charging our line in that instance, but it gives us the opportunity to explore that building a little bit more, explore our equipment a little bit more, and just dial in that operation. So if that officer comes back and is like, hey guys, we've got something up here, I'm calling, you know, for a high-rise box, we're dialed, we're ready to go right then, and we're not behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I agree with John. And you know, one thing I'll add too is from the backseat perspective, like sometimes we don't always, even if we would like to get a full rep, like sometimes the crew that you're working on, you know, maybe the boss just doesn't see eye to eye with that, and whatever, you know, if it's something that they want to run up and kind of do the bare minimum on, like, try to definitely push to at least get some sort of recon done, at least some sort of building familiarization. Like, I know it's always easy just to shut up and go through the motions and stuff, but these going in these buildings on EMS runs and stuff is kind of one thing, but like going in them on AFA, you're there with a fire mindset. Like, don't waste the rep, even if it's a little something, like a little talking point you can put the headsets on back in the rig and bring up with the guys on the way back to the station, whatever it is. Like, just try to take whatever you can. Hopefully your crew is able to stretch on it, and if it's nothing, at least you're getting a rep. But if your boss is just kind of like wanting to do the bare minimum, like, there's always things that we can do from the back seat to try to prompt, hey, I don't know what you want me to do on, so on and so forth. When this happens, like, kind of put them on the spot a little bit and be like, hey, teach me, Cap, teach me, right? So push them a little bit, and hopefully they open up. But sometimes you got to kind of pry it out of them. So
yeah, certainly, especially like if you have an officer that you're not necessarily working with on a regular basis, if he's roving in for that day, that just kind of like sets the tone for the type of company that you want to be. And you might learn something from a guy who's not normally there, but it just keeps them pushing, and make sure that you're addressing everything that you need to, because just because the fire alarm panel isn't showing multiple detectors going off doesn't mean that you can just write the thing off as, oh, you know what, let's just go for a reset right here at the panel, without actually climbing the stairs and figuring out what's going on that floor.
What tip are you guys using on the 2.5 for your high-rise bundles?
For us, we're using 1 1/8.
Yeah, 1 1/8.
And then, are you guys carrying a couple additional tips if you need to tip up due to a pressure problem or anything like that?
We do have an 1 1/2 tip, but it's not connected to our nozzle section. That would be in the high-rise bag that we have, and we also carry an additional nozzle with an 1 1/8 tip as well.
Yeah, we're stacked 1 1/4, 1 1/8.
Okay. Cool. Did we? I know you guys answered most of my questions, and if we got all the other questions answered in the Q&A, we'll just move on. If you guys are ready.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. We finally get to watch our Stockton boys doing some work. They always seem to do it pretty well. But yeah, set this one up a little bit. It's a single family with just that large body of fire showing. And I know in the fire service, we kind of have this conversation sometimes. Again, you get those people who are a little bit hesitant to, kind of blow your wad whenever you first show up, whether that's, hitting this thing with the deck gun, dropping a 2.5. Some people say, oh, hey, I can get this with the Blitz fire or my Ram. And then there's other people that say, hey, this is a 1-story single family house, and due to the compartmentalization, I'm going to be able to get this with an 1 3/4. And so I kind of want to hear you guys talk about that. Obviously, how does whether you grabbed your own water supply or you're relying on somebody else to come and grab that for you, how does that affect your decision on what line to deploy, or does it? And then, there's a couple other access issues here that we can kind of get into as well. But I'll just let this video play for the moment and give everybody a quick look. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. And I'm going to fast forward. We're going to get a look down the other side of the building here as well. I think that was a little ways on in the video here. But yeah, they obviously have a lot of fire involvement. So I'm going to rewind it and take it away, fellas. What do you think? What are you going to deploy on this, and why? How are we going to justify this decision?
You want to grab this one, Jay, or you want me to go first?
Yeah. So, I think this is right on the verge of, like, the upper capabilities of that 1 3/4 line. I think you're never going to regret just going with the 2.5 and really letting it rip on that thing, and getting it kind of brought back down into that first year 1 3/4 land. Now that the thing that the 1 3/4 line, the thing that we have going for us is, yeah, it's a residence, it's compartmentalized, it's a we're not looking at like giant vaulted ceilings and like one of those it doesn't look like a newer style kind of big 4,000 square foot with, huge picture windows and that sort of a house, right? In which case, yeah, that 2.5, that would definitely tip me towards that 2.5 for sure. Air into the 2.5 on this, and hitting it and really getting a lot of knockback, and then following up quick with that 1 3/4 inside is gonna probably be the go-to plan there. But one thing I'll say about deck guns, I really I'm not a huge fan of it. Well, on this particular fire, I'm not a fan of the deck gun option, because the deck gun is such a fixed position and such a flat angle of water from the street there. Like, there are companies where they'd show up and they would hit this with the deck gun. I think that the 2.5, you're going to get very rapid results, but you add the additional benefit of being able to get the exact angle that you want, and you can shut it down, move it up, get it 5 feet inside that front door there and work 90 left, 90 right, because this thing is sorry, I got a couple Mandalorians walking in the door here. But yeah, you get that added benefit of the agility of the attack line. So the deck gun with that, it's on top of the rig. It's going to likely be pointed somewhat downward on this fire. And I'm not saying there's never a point in which a deck gun on a single family residence isn't called for. Like, if there's heavy exterior involvement and all that kind of stuff, on the bulk of the house on, like, sure. But we're looking at this building and going, man, there's searchable survival space on that backside. Like, we need to get this thing brought back within control and followed up quickly inside. As far as letting the water supply like dictate what line choice, man, choose the right size line. If it's a deck gun, if the right size line is a deck gun, call the deck gun. If it's a 2.5, call it 2.5, so on and so forth. We don't lay in where I work. We don't really almost ever lay in. I mean, I don't want to say never, but it's very, very, very rare. The first engine goes to the front of the building, pulls past, leaves room for the truck, and then another engine company is going to come in and take care of water supply for us, or we're gonna, if it's close enough, our driver will overhaul. But yeah, man, choose the fire needs what it needs. So if you're in that mindset of maybe trying to air to the smaller size line just so that you can keep water flowing, I get it. Like, it's uncomfortable being on scene and shooting what you got out of your tank and not having water flowing. Like, yeah, there's going to be people yelling and this and that and the other, but like, you're the professional. You show up, you make the judgment call of what it needs, and if anything, aim a little bit high and flow as much water as that fire is going to need.
So Jay kind of alluded to it in my thought process on deck gun versus an attack line. With that stream angled down from a deck gun to a first story, you're just not going to get a whole lot of bang for your buck. You're going to be flowing a lot of water, but because the heat is in the higher register and you're going to be flowing down through windows in order to attack this fire, you're not going to be able to address all that heat at the ceiling on a first floor. Now, if this was a second story ripping, you might have more luck using your deck gun from the apparatus. But I'm with Jay in terms of using an attack line on this. Me personally, I'm looking at probably pulling about 150 feet of 2.5 and just kind of posting up on the sidewalk initially, addressing that panoramic view of that fire right away, seeing if I can't get a good knockdown in, 15, 20 seconds across each of those spaces on that alpha side of the structure, with the anticipation of advancing that line up the porch and getting it, 5-10 feet inside of that structure pretty quickly to then, do the 90 left, 90 right, like Jay was talking about. I think you're just going to be so much more judicious in your water usage using the 2.5, and it's going to be placed in a much more advantageous position as well, to really knock back that fire where your deck gun's just not going to do it. Unless you have your ram, pre-piped in some type of pre-connected line, I think it's going to take more time than is going to be gained by trying to, flow 500 gallons a minute out of a portable monitor. I think you can do just as much work using an attack line with a nozzle on the end of it. So I'm going 2.5 on this one, with hopes that second in engine can stretch to side Charlie, maybe with 1 3/4 inch, and come through that backside, because we're going to be delayed in making entry on this type of fire. The volume of fire is such that I'm not just going to be able to, run through this house. So in that instance, you got to have that communication. We don't want opposing hose streams or anything like that. But if I'm just going, 5-10 feet inside of that front door, I'm going to have some time to knock down a lot of fire before I have another company coming through that backside, trying to knock me over with their stream. But, maybe the communication is, once that second engine is stretched to the backside and has a clear path in, hey, we're making entry on the Charlie side, shut down line on the alpha, and then whatever cleanup is left that 2.5 didn't handle, that line coming in from the backside could take care of. But I'm not gonna allow 2 lines up on that front porch, because they're just not gonna be getting the bang for the buck that you think.
Yeah, cool. Hey, so one of the other things I kind of wanted to talk about was, and really we could discuss this for a lot of the fires that we looked at, was the second line considerations and making sure that whenever, that second line gets stretched, that it doesn't impede the advancement of that first one. And so here we've got this, wrought iron fence here in the front yard that kind of makes this choke point right in front of the front door. So yeah, whenever we do get this backed up, even if that's the third line, how do you make sure that if that's your company stretching that third line that's going to back up this one here on the front side, how do you make sure that it's not you get it flaked out and it's not on top of that first line?
Yeah, I think you got to be kind of you got to be a little bit more deliberate, like how much do I need for the attack length, and then my supply side of my stretch here. Like we're pretty heavily pre-connected in my area. We do have 1 3/4 bolt close now, but in my department we do have a lot of guys that really err to that 200-foot pre-connect. So with a bulk load, you definitely are a little bit better set up to not have to deal with that supply side of the line, like the back end of the bundle or whatever. But if you're pre-connected, you got to be very conscious about loading too much hose. Like there's a pretty good size yard here, so just be prepared to like run at a 45-degree angle to the door, out of the way of that first line. Like one guy stretches, the other guy, so we're 3-man, sometimes 4, but typically 3-man companies. So one guy is stretching while the other guy, as far as the backup line goes, the other guy is right hands on the first line and starting to move line inside. But yeah, you can't bog them down. And like backing up just a touch too. Sorry, my daughter's home. She fresh off of her visit to the ER here. She ate a dime earlier tonight, so she's all got a lot of pep in her step. She came in, turned the lights off right at the end of that. So if you do choose 1 3/4 on this as the first line, like I just kind of want to brush over that really quick. If you take it nice and slow. Like if you do choose it, go to the 1 3/4. We're compartmentalized. Like go slow on this thing and flow water, man. Like make sure you put a lot of water, on the floor, cool off the floor. Like this thing's going pretty good. You're gonna want to do that with with the 2.5 when you hit it and go inside anyway. But if you got that 1 3/4, it's really room to room. And like kind of going back to a little bit of mindset stuff too, is that be prepared in your mindset as a nozzleman of I got to be ready for the 2-minute firefight or the whatever, like to have that line open for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, like as I work my way methodically, one room to the next room to the next room, because we absolutely can do it. And if you're a in-tuned nozzle firefighter, like holistically, and you understand in order to do that, you have to be fairly, like you have to be in good shape, and you got to be like, you got to take your physical ability and all that kind of stuff seriously. Like you're the dude putting water on the fire. So if you gas out because you can't hold that line and move around inside a structure for 60 seconds, then your capabilities and you're limiting the capabilities and the effectiveness of your crew, right? So if you do choose that 1 3/4 line, like room to room, really take care of one room with your stream, wash it down real good, and start finding that next room with your stream. Use the stream reach as best you can. There's going to be so much heat in there that if you outpace the cooling of your water, which is totally easy to do, you're going to end up saturating your gear pretty good. It's going to be pretty uncomfortable for you. So the whole mindset is like there's survivable space on the backside of that. We got to protect the search. Like and that's why I like that 2.5 choice, because it just really snuffs this thing hard from the get-go, and buys us back some seconds. But if you got that 1 3/4, man, really do a good job working room to room, be methodical, hitting all the walls, make sure you're coating everything. Like we don't just go till it goes dark, like go and then some. Because once it goes dark, there's still a lot of residual heat in there. There's a lot of contents. Everything was on fire. So take your time with it.
So Jay, you're hitting all around this right now. A question popped up into the chat. It said, with a report of a victim on the Charlie side, would it change your initial line placement?
Sorry, let me pull that up here. Oh, would it change my initial line placement? Not really, man. So again, to bang for your buck, right? Like I don't know exactly, where that victim is, and the best thing as an engine company that I can typically do is knock the fire out. Like, are there times where you've got somebody hanging out a window that you can real quick grab them or whatever, and pull them out like as water's coming? Like, yeah, sure, but in this one, to forego this fire because there's a report of somebody back there, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that if I grab that person, the building's all clear, right? Like knocking this fire out buys that search time, and yes, we will get them. Like this is not a one-man army type of an operation of a fire here. Like I'm really going to lean heavy on those other crews coming up behind us. We're working on that fire, and they are aggressively getting in, like infesting the building. VES is going to be king on this, right? From the exterior, they're going to be crawling in through windows and trying to access those compartments under the understanding that I'm going to have that fire pretty well knocked out.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for me, like, let's say this is worst case scenario. Like you show up, you've got 3-man company and the next engine is like 4 or 5 minutes away. I think the line choice and the line positioning is still the same for me. 2.5, like starting like near that sidewalk right by the wrought iron gate. And maybe I put the engineer on that line in that case. If like I've got a confirmed victim, Charlie side, hey, you know, leave the pump panel set where it is, engineer, flow water right here, and try to knock this down with a 2.5, while the firefighter and the officer go for VAS to that confirmed victim on the Charlie side. But like Jay was saying, addressing this volume of fire is going to do the most good for that victim and any other victim on this fire. But I'm not going to take, you know, 3 firefighters out of the game in that case by flowing one line. Maybe I just throw one on it and let the other 2 who are already packed up, ready to go, address the confirmed victim in that case. Now, if it's just reports, you know, who knows if they make that call, but I think the line choice is still the right one here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables too. Like just because, you know, hey, there's a victim on the Charlie side, like there's a lot of variables that can make going for that person, you know, and foregoing the fire turn out to be, you know, maybe it doesn't work out like you think it would, right? Like if that person is, you know, 400 pounds on a rascal scooter, like that's going to take you guys everything you can and then some to get that person out a window, right? So like there's all sorts of different variables. The one variable that I know is that I can crush this fire. So like if I can do that and take the first sure right now and stick my foot in the ground and go, we're going to get there. Like we're coming for you. But yeah, I like the for sure, the certainty on this one of crushing the fire and then working on getting the people out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sweet. Well, fellas, I think we kind of got a decision to make. We're at the 2-hour mark right now. We do have a couple more videos we could potentially show, or if you guys just want to go back to Zoom and we can just open up the Q&A for just some kind of random questions. What are your thoughts?
What are we missing? I know we talked about strip center. What else?
Yeah, I think all we got is a couple commercial fires and trailers.
Okay. I think we've done residential. Let's knock out one commercial. Let's do this strip center, and then we'll forego
there's a couple good talking points.
Yeah,
there's a couple good talking points on that one.
Cool. So this first one's just a quick simulation. Pretty straightforward, but again, yeah, just gets us in a different occupancy to, you know, start talking about this different mindset that we should bring to this type of fire. And then we'll follow it up with an actual strip mall fire. It's got a video that can play for a while. That's got a few more talking points than really the simulation offers. But everybody get a peek at this. You guys want me to just get to the next video?
Yeah. Yeah, so right here, these guys are, so just kind of quick diagnostics as a pipeman. There's 2 reasons, you know, fire's not going out, and obviously they've got a lot of fire that they're working with that's up in the common, you know, void space up there. So the 2 reasons fire doesn't go out: either not enough water or it's not in the right spot. And you know, on strip mall fires, you know for sure it's gonna make a run for that void space. So I really, like, they're just kind of spraying the outside of the building. They're trying to find little holes to poke their stream through. It's a really good idea on these things to try to get up underneath it and get water going horizontally there. So, you know, a lot of like initial line 2.5 and blow a lot of those that ceiling apart and use that reach of your stream, because it, you know, probably started down low and worked its way up. Another thing that you got to be careful of right out of the gate is, did it start like strip malls? A lot of times they start on the backside, like a dumpster fire that worked its way up and in or something like that. So, you know, make sure it's not like an exterior fire that worked its way up and in, but, you know, you got to get water up and underneath the bottoms of those things. And the nice thing that they have is, they're deep. So you've got, you know, one unit, narrow, deep. It's a super easy advancement. You know, they got a lot of clarity on floor one there. Like, get the line inside the door and get the water coming up from the underside on this one.
I'm absolutely with Jay on this one. If it's like a single occupancy, you're talking about maybe like 15-foot storefront and then maybe 70 feet depth for a single occupancy. Now, I mean, they take over additional spaces as the businesses grow and stuff like that. But in that instance, you get inside that doorway like 5 feet and your stream is going to be hitting the back wall on some of these, depending on how they've compartmentalized them. Now, like if it's a restaurant or something like that, they might have, you know, their kitchen blocking you reaching all the way to the back. But most of the time, like they have a hallway down to the bathroom or whatever, your stream is going to hit the back wall in these as long as you get inside. So it's going to take some truck work, like Jay's talking about, to get into that void space, because almost every one of these occupancies, you're going to have some type of like drop ceiling, or it's just going to be open to the roofing webs underneath it. And you never know. And it's going to depend occupancy to occupancy to occupancy, what that's going to look like. So it might be, you know, drop ceiling in the nail salon, but in the restaurant next door, they like the industrial look to it. So you're looking at all the HVAC and you're looking at the, you know, the roof system right underneath you. So get inside of these spaces and address that with your water from the inside. Typically you're not terribly far from your means of egress. Jay brought up a point of, you know, alpha side versus Charlie side. In terms of access, your alpha side is always going to be the easiest access. It's going to be, you know, like glass window panes. It's going to be a simple mortise lock. Adam's right. A lot of times this is like the K-Tools dream, you know, to just go down and like break into 20 different occupancies as you go down. But if you go to that Charlie side, that's where they're fortifying it. They don't want people on the Charlie side. And, you know, people aren't in and out of that door the same way that, you know, the customers are on that front side. So you might have some challenges if you try to work it from the Charlie side in. You're going to have much better luck going alpha side to the back on those fires. Obviously, if this is an outside in type fire, have the company go back there and do what they need to do. But for the bulk of the work, your easiest access is going to be alpha side on these things. You got to get into neighboring occupancies. You have to. So even if it just looks like one unit is on fire, you got to get into the next one, because these occupancies, they change overnight. And it seems like every month there's a new business in and out of these strip centers. And with that comes all kinds of remodels, and that turnover just leads to all kinds of opportunities for new void spaces, new electrical and internet lines going all the way across these ceiling spaces. So you got to get into the neighboring occupancies very early. Otherwise you end up in the situation like that live video where now you suddenly have 10 different occupancies when it just started in, you know, the hood system of the restaurant in the middle.
Sweet. Do we get any questions about this one we need to address?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as a general rule with those, like you saw those guys doing in the video, but a lot of the times it's you know, fire will go through the lid on those things pretty, not necessarily quickly, but like that's kind of it'll go through the roof. And a lot of times you'll have like, oh, let's, you know, set up ladders and try to squirt down on this thing and whatnot, and it's you know, eventually it'll come through, but you know, you're kind of really limiting yourself. You have so much potential because of, like John said, with those big windows, to be able to, even from the outside, like work your streams up and underneath the roof decking in these. I mean, they're just such a opportunity there to use stream reach that you don't have to just, you know, pressure wash the outside of the building with your stream and then, you know, kick out the lawn chairs and put the ladder pipe up. Like, it doesn't have to be that kind of fire on these buildings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this one is, like I said, this is going to be truck work heavy and opening up those voids. You're going to have, you know, like false parapet walls. You're going to have awnings that come out to the front to hold the signage and stuff. All of that is going to end up being void space on those. So, you know, getting a truck company topside, opening up those voids, getting a truck company right at, you know, the entrance to these and pulling down, you know, the awning that, you know, covers the, you know, 5 foot of sidewalk leading up to these businesses. That's all going to be really important.
Well, nice, fellas.
Yeah.